being put to place. So it is at this third phase that the project...
Sorry, Manager Bolu, can you just summarize from the beginning? I'm just trying to make it recorded now. Just a brief summary. Please go ahead. Thank you. Yeah.
All right. So I began by establishing the fact that under the project management success part, we have dealt with the 4 project constraints in our last class. And so, okay, you mean from the first class, sir?
Just do a brief on the first class, just a brief, and so that it can flow, so I can have the recorded one on the later. Thank you.
All right. So let me just do a brief rundown, especially of the things that we spoke about in the first class. So in the first class, we began by defining what a project is. And we said a project is a temporal endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, result, or service. And so we also said that there are 2 types of projects: tangible projects and intangible projects. And we established that tangible projects are projects that the end result or the deliverable of that project can be physically felt and handled. E.g., the device that each and every one of us in our various locations is using to follow up with this meeting is a tangible project that can be handled and felt. It's a project that is embarked on by an organization. And an intangible project are projects that we can't physically handle them. However, we can feel the impact of the result of that project. So e.g., a lecturer lecturing a class or a student, a lawyer defending a case, those can be classified as intangible projects. We went further to establish that there are 3 phases of projects, or classes, 3 classes of project. The first is a project that we have defined. The second is a program. And the third, a portfolio. And we said a program is a set of interrelated projects handled together, coordinated together to achieve certain benefits that we wouldn't get when we handle those projects individually. We also said that a portfolio is a set of programs and projects coordinated together to achieve strategic objectives. And so we went further to establish the basic framework from which we'll begin to move from, saying that as far as project management is concerned, there is what we call project management success part. And project management success part lays the foundation of everything that a project manager must fully know and master to be called a project manager. And under that, we said we have 10 knowledge areas, which will be taken one after the other. We said we have 49 logical processes, we have 5 process groups, and we have 4 project constraints. Now, what are the 4 project constraints in every project? We have the scope of that project, we have the schedule, which is the time of that project, and we also have the cost of that project, and we have quality. Now, these 4 elements I've just mentioned are part of the knowledge areas, but the reason why we single them out and name them 4 project constraints is because of their influence on any project. Amongst the 10 knowledge areas, these 4 have great influence above others in determining the success of a project, namely the cost of that project, the timing of that project, the scope of that project, all work together to achieve quality. And the reason why we are embarking on any project is because at the end of the day, we want to ensure that we have quality. And so these are the 4 project constraints that we have. So moving ahead, we are now trying to explain the 5 process groups of a project. And I said that the 5 project group is peculiar to every project. Every project handled by a project manager, there are certain phases the project must pass through, and they are called the 5 projects process groups. And the first is the initiation phase. And I said that it is the initiation phase that meetings an agreement go on between the project manager and the sponsor of that project, and it's at the initiation phase that a project charter is signed. The most important activity in the initiation phase is signing a project charter, because that is what legally and officially authorizes the existence of that project in the first place. Every other discussion, verbal discussion we've had, what authorizes the existence of that project and what gives the project manager the right to use the organizational resources to achieve the aims and objectives of that project is a project charter. That is initiation phase. The second phase is the planning phase. And I said the planning phase is no longer between the project manager and the sponsor of that project, but between the project management team. So the project manager goes back with his teammates and begins to relate to them the scope of the project as established between him and the sponsor of the project. Begin to relate the timing of the project to his team, begin to relate the cost of the project to his team, and all the information that the team needs to be aware of. And it is at this phase that the team begins to plan on the successful execution of that project. So more to come on this, because as we begin to handle the knowledge areas one after the other, we'll begin to dwell on these different phases. And so the third, sir? Okay, please, let's ensure that everyone that is speaking right now should kindly mute their audio.
I think you should be able to mute all. You should be able to mute all.
Right. Hello, please mute yourself, please. Please mute yourself. I'll mute Paul now.
Yes.
Yeah, please. No, we are not many. We just feel that we should have right to be able to ask questions. So let's try to do a few class. So instead of raising hands every time. So let's still maintain this. Please go ahead, sir.
All right. So now the third process group is the execution phase. And this is the phase where the team managing the project begins to put to work what they have planned as regards the project. So this is a time that they begin to put all their expertise at work to ensure the deliverable of that project, to ensure that the aims and objectives of that project comes out. Now, the fourth process group, which is the fourth phase every project must pass through, is a monitoring and controlling phase. The monitoring and controlling phase. The project manager at this phase must ensure that he monitors the progress of the project. Is everything going in line with the scope? Possibly it's a construction project, and the scope of that project possibly might be that the roofing of that specific construction should be done with POP. And so he is now seeing that another type of material is being used. He should ensure proper monitoring of that project to ensure that it is going according to scope, according to cost, according to schedule. And if it is not going according to these basic established facts as regards that project, he must begin to put measures in place to ensure that he controls the process, to ensure that they meet up with what has been established in the project charter. Someone asked a question last week that if a project charter has been signed and established, can it be altered? And I answered that question by, it is possible that a project charter is signed and established. However, the project manager, as the project proceeds, may become aware of certain things or certain environmental enterprise factor that may warrant certain changes in the scope of that project. Now, these factors may not be the fault of the project manager. However, the project manager do not have any right to effect those changes without effective communication with the sponsor of the project. So when effective communication with the sponsor of the project has taken place, both of them can now agree together to adjust the content of the project charter. Now, that process is controlling. So a project manager must be able to monitor and control the execution of whatsoever project that is committed to you. And the fifth process group, which is the fifth phase every project passes through, is the closing phase. As a project manager, as an organization handling any project, don't rejoice yet till the project has been signed, closed. A document was signed to formally authorize the existence of that project. A document must be signed to close that project. So the sponsor of the project will sign that, having received the deliverables of this project in good faith, it is in line with the requirements and the scope of that project. Once that has been done, go and rejoice as a project manager. Your work is not complete till that same project is signed to have been closed. So the last phase is the closing phase. So these are the 5 process groups that every project passes through. And as I begin to take the knowledge areas one after the other, we'll also be explaining and going deeper into these process groups. So before I proceed with the knowledge areas, is there any question or comment? If there is none, just tell me to go ahead.
Yeah, you sound right.
All right. So the first knowledge area we'll be taking now is called project integration management. Project integration management. I want to ask us a question. Based on your understanding, what does the word integration means? When we talk about integration, what does it mean? Can anyone answer that question? Integration.
And I think integration means making, putting many things, different things together, and doing at the same time. For example, you can talk of a integrated plan, integrated communication is a different thing going at the same time or happening at the same time to complement each other.
Correct. Absolutely correct. Thank you very much, sir. So integration is actually bringing different operations together to achieve certain benefit or certain operation, ability to combine and unify different process or different tributaries from a network to achieve a meaningful goal. And so when we say project integration management is all the processes that has to do with unifying, uniting, and coordinating the success of a project. The most important knowledge area in the 10 out of the 10 knowledge area we'll be considering is a project integration management. Now, it is possible that on a certain project, depending on how large the project is, there is more than one project manager handling that project. Last week, we spoke about a very important example where we talk about the government of Kenya trying to boost Kenya's international transportation in the next 3 years. Now, that kind of project, which is a portfolio, will require the expertise of different managers at different levels. Usually, more than one project manager will be working on the success of that project due to its size, its impact, and the level of stakeholders that will be involved in that project. However, the lead project manager in that project or for any other project is a project integration manager. The project integration manager is usually the lead project manager in any project that involves the input of more than one project manager. But in a case where we have a single project manager handling that project, that manager is functioning in the capacity of the project integration manager. And it is the duty of that manager to unify all the requirements of the 10 knowledge areas that should ensure the completion of a project. He must unify all that processes and handle it. So it is very important that we master the 10 knowledge areas that will be taught, because you as a project manager must be able to handle the 10 knowledge area single-handedly. You must be able to coordinate and unify the activities of the 10 knowledge area into any project to achieve the success. But in a case where we have multiple managers on a project, the knowledge areas can be shared amongst themselves. However, the lead project manager at any time is a project integration manager. So it is a project integration manager that unifies and coordinates all the processes necessary, all the knowledge areas necessary for the successful completion of a project at a given time. So let me give us an example. Let's establish an example. Now, one of the leading organizations in Africa, we have different organizations in Africa that I'll be making reference to, using them to explain the knowledge areas one after the other. And one of such organizations is the MTN Group. I'll be using the Dangote Group and the ShopRite Holding. Now, let me cite ShopRite Holding, for instance. ShopRite Holding is an international organization that is African-based and have network across different countries in Africa. Say for instance, ShopRite, one of the processes for ShopRite is food processing, aside from other things they do. Now, one of the things peculiar to being a project manager is that you can be an integration manager over an organization and may not have you may not have knowledge on the direct productive process of that organization. I will explain. E.g., one of the food processing organizations we have around here in Nigeria is Foodco. It is possible that the manager in charge of a specific branch in Foodco may not know how to boil water or fry an egg, but he is managing an organization that's into food processing. How can he manage that? Let me cite another example. Julius Berger is an organization that's into civil engineering. Now, as far as Nigerian operation of Julius Berger is concerned, the owner of 49% of Julius Berger is an attorney in Germany. Now, he's a lawyer. Searching on his profile, I do not see any trace of knowledge in civil engineering. But how can that individual manage an organization that's into civil engineering? So the idea of being an integration manager, being the head of all the managerial position in an organization as to achieve certain project or operation in an organization does not necessarily mean that you must have first-class knowledge on the basic productive process of that organization, but your ability to manage and unify all the knowledge areas and processes that is needed to achieve the aims and objectives of that organization. Ability to manage the humans and resources in that organization. You will discover that by the time we get to project scope management, you begin to see that whoever who function in the capacity of the scope of any project should be someone that has first-class knowledge on the basic productive process of that organization.
And so to interject, and my understanding is that a project manager can manage a project through the expert, the team he's working with, through the consultation and having proper, communication with them, so that as a project manager, you need to be keen. So you use their knowledge and experts to manage the program. So as a manager, you don't need to be expert in area. For example, I am a PR specialist, but still I can manage a construction and project because I will be having team of experts that I will coordinate and work with them. Is that right?
Beautiful submission, sir. Absolutely correct.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. So let's begin to take the logical processes one after the other. Now, by the logical processes, I mean the duties that whoever is functioning as the integration manager in a project must be able to satisfy. If you can successfully satisfy the requirements of this process I'm about to list, then you can achieve success as regards integration, managing integration on a project. So the first duty of the project integration manager is to develop the project charter. Yes, it is your duty to develop the project charter. And we've spoken extensively on what a project charter is. It is the duty of a project manager functioning in the capacity of the project integration manager to develop the project charter. He will be the one in the forefront having meetings and agreements with the sponsor of that project. So whatsoever be the discussion as regards that project, he is in the forefront of that process. And so he is the one developing the project charter of that specific project. Now, each of these logical process I'll be mentioning one after the other under the knowledge areas have their inputs, outputs, and tools and techniques. Now, what do I mean by the input, output, and tools and techniques? Each of these processes, there are certain inputs, certain documents, certain activities that are necessary to achieve success in each of these logical processes. There are certain tools and techniques as well that can help you achieve success in these specific logical processes. And by the time the inputs come in, processed by the tools and techniques, the output is actually the logical process itself. So let me explain that using the development of the project charter as the first duty of the project integration manager. Now, part of the input that can help you in successfully developing a project charter is a document called Project Statement of Work. Now, there are different documents we'll be talking about as we proceed in this training. Now, the Project Statement of Work is a document that is developed by the sponsor of that project, your client, your major stakeholder, stating what the deliverable of that project should look like. So in order to develop the project charter, especially the scope correctly, requesting for the statement of work of that specific project from the sponsor of that project is very important. Now, it might not be applicable in all cases. And another thing is the business case document of that project. Now, these documents establish the importance as regards the profits of that project to the sponsor of that project. Now, every project is carried out for specific reasons. Some projects are carried out specifically on business grounds. So whoever is sponsoring that project wants to ensure that there is profit or there is value attached to that project in return. So these are some of the inputs you require to build a good project charter. Another input is having meetings, organizing meetings with the major stakeholder of that project, which is a sponsor of that project. By the time you, of course, part of the things that by the time these inputs are processed by certain tools and techniques, one of which is expert judgment, a good project charter can be developed. Now, by expert judgment, that as a project manager, you may not have direct, however, you can leverage on other managers and experts to be consulted and partner with as far as that project is concerned. Now, expert judgment will be required from these individuals as regards developing the project, as regards the scope of that project. So these are some of the input tools and techniques that you can that can help develop a project charter, of which once these tools are adequately worked with, the output is the project charter. So from time to time, we'll be talking about input, output, and tools and techniques as regards each logical process under each knowledge area. So developing the project charter is one of the major duties of any project manager functioning under the capacity of the project integration manager. The second logical process, which is the second duty of a project manager functioning in the capacity of the project integration manager, is to develop a project management plan. Now, developing a project charter falls in the initiation phase. Developing a project management plan falls in the planning phase. So here is the project manager working with his team, developing the plan of that project, the details as regards how the project will be planned for. Because a project without planning is a project that will fail, is a project that even if it's successful, it may not meet the schedule or the timeline of that project. So adequate plan must take place. What are the inputs required for successful planning of a project? The project charter. Enterprise environmental factors. And I said enterprise environmental factors are activities that affect business, especially natural activities that affect business. A project charter must be able to work with his team in order to forecast certain enterprise environmental factors that can affect the success of that project and begin to make plans for it. Now, here is where the project risk manager will come in. And we've not even discussed about the project risk management. But this tells you that it is a duty of the project integration manager to begin to unify the process or the knowledge of every other managers or every other knowledge area required in that for that project. So definitely, in order to forecast and work towards establishing that certain environmental factors do not affect the success of that project negatively, he needs to work with the project risk manager. And whosoever will be the project risk manager of any project as recommended should be someone that has first-class knowledge in health, safety, and environment, preferably an HSC officer. Now, HSC is another field of knowledge entirely. Now, an HSC officer can be leveraged upon in order to perform risk analysis of that project. These are certain tools that can help in ensuring the overall success of a project. So we can now see the integration officer pulling together unifying the requirements of each knowledge area to achieve the aims and objectives of that project. Now, once these inputs come into place with expert judgment, of course, a good plan of the project can ensue. So planning the project, planning the outcome of the project from the beginning, before we launch out to begin to execute that project, is a duty of the project integration manager. He is the one that will ensure that he mobilizes his team, mobilize his consultants, mobilizing other stakeholders he's working with. Now, these stakeholders can be other organizations he's partnering with that will handle certain aspects of that project. It is his duty to mobilize them, work with them towards ensuring an adequate plan of that project. The third logical processes, or the third duty that anyone functioning in the capacity of the project integration manager must carry out, is to direct and manage the project work. Direct and manage the project work. Yes, it is the duty of the project integration manager to direct and manage the project work. When directing and managing, what is he doing? Of course, the project is being executed. He needs to ensure that all of the activities that needs to be put in place to ensure smooth running, e.g. conflict management, conflict resolution techniques, handling meetings with stakeholders, ensuring adequate communication, all of these processes needs to be adequately carried out by the project manager to ensure that the success of the project. So the third logical process is direct and manage project work. This is his duty. Don't forget, if you are handling a project that is not possibly large enough, and you are the only manager in that project, you are to handle all of the knowledge areas to ensure the success of the project, as the case may be. The fourth logical process under project integration management is to manage project knowledge. Manage project knowledge. Manage project knowledge. Now, let me go back to the example I gave earlier. I was citing an organization called Food Co. And Food Co is an organization that is into food processing, mainly an eatery. And I said that the project integration manager or a manager handling a branch in Food Co may not even know how to fry an egg. But how is he ensuring the success of that project? Now, let's check the structure of Food Co. Food Co is an organization that has different networks across the country and different branches. Now, there are project managers at the headquarter level, and the lead project manager is a project integration manager. There is the project cost manager that handles everything as regards finance of that organization. Now, whoever will be appointed to manage finance will be someone that has a certification in project management and someone that has first-class knowledge on financial operations, possibly an accountant or a business administrator. I want us to really get the flow. So the integration manager is the one handling the knowledge of that project. So he needs to ensure that the knowledge area attached to cost is effectively implemented. And so it is his duty to outsource an individual that has knowledge in project management and how to manage finance effectively to be the project manager handling the finance of the project of that organization for a given period of time. Another knowledge area that you need to focus on is stakeholders management. And who is best to handle stakeholders? someone that has knowledge in human resource management. First-class knowledge in managing stakeholders. And so he might want to work with someone that has knowledge and certification in human resource management. So he is the one that will ensure that each knowledge, the knowledge areas, the 10 knowledge areas that is responsible to ensure success of the project is effectively established by subscribing to individuals that he could leverage on that will handle those knowledge areas. So managing the project knowledge is an important duty of the project integration manager. The next logical process that he must focus on is monitor and control project work. Now, why taking us on the process group, we spoke about the monitoring and controlling phase. It is a duty of the project integration manager to ensure that he monitors and control the project as it is being executed. Of course, documents or input that will be needed to achieve the success in this logical process is a project management plan, which was established by the team, not the project charter. The project management plan that was established by the team managing the project, schedule forecast, enterprise environmental factor, cost analysis. If they are procuring, we are still getting to cost. If they are procuring materials, with possibly raw materials that will ensure the success of that project. Now, all of these are inputs that he could leverage upon to ensure that he successfully monitors and control the project work effectively. So it is his duty to monitor and control the project work. It is also the duty of the project integration manager to perform integrated change control. The authority to perform integrated change control is also in the hands of the project integration manager. So at any point in time, through effective communication, there can be agreement between him and the sponsor of that project as regards certain informations in the project charter. So the manager that can work with the sponsor of the project to effect change in the project charter is a project integration manager, because he is the one that developed it in the first place, which was the first duty of the project integration manager we spoke on. He is the one developing the project charter. He is the one partnering with the sponsor of that project, which is the major stakeholder in that project, if there will be any change in the project charter of that project or any change at all in the management of that project. So performing integrated change control is the duty of the project integration manager. And the last knowledge area of the project, last logical processes under the project integration manager is project closure. Project closure. I told us that as a project manager, you don't rejoice till the project is signed closed. It is a project integration manager and the sponsor of the project that will sign the closure of that project. And so it is the duty of the project integration manager amidst other project managers on a specific project to close a specific project by co-signing a document with the sponsor of the project, having received the deliverables of that project, and it is satisfied with the result. So let me go back to the example I gave earlier and build some structures that can help us graphically understand project integration management. Then I will receive questions from us. So we have an organization, possibly ShopRite, for instance, having a headquarters that has project integration managers, project cost managers, has project schedule managers, and different managers handling different knowledge area in that project. Now, this organization have networks, branches, and units across different locations, geographical locations, as the case may be. Now, each of these units also have managers, possibly a branch manager as regards his unit. He is an integration manager for his unit. And that unit will also have a manager handling costs that reports directly as regards finance to the headquarters of that project. You know, in one of the classes, one of my trainees, in one of the trainings made a statement. He said, if he gets to meet individuals like Tony Enumelu and Dangote, that one of the questions he will ask them is, how were they able to handle an organization so large, having large network across Africa, and the organization is still standing effectively? And the answer is correct project management. Now, you will agree with me, as that I just want to give you an illustration. As that when Dangote had a degree in business administration from Harvard University, he was already one of the successful businessmen in Africa. Now, let me use his organization as an illustration. He is into processing of cement. He's into processing of fertilizers for agricultural purposes, processing of salt, sugar, noodles, and certain food processes. Now, it is possible that a staff working in one of the farms, possibly a sugarcane farm in Dangote organization, may be working for 15 years and never set eyes on Dangote. It is possible that Dangote might spend certain number of years or possibly have never visited a sugarcane farm. But you have staff working in these facilities, working effectively to ensure the success farm, and leave it to the care of someone. You know the level at which you will meet that work. How were these individuals able to handle such large organizations? It is not possible that they all have first-class knowledge on the basic productive process of that organization. Dangote may not be a chemical engineer, may not be a food technologist, may not have first-class knowledge on the basic productive processes of some of the business or the operations in his organization. But his ability to manage the people and the resources and the knowledge areas in that organization is what results to the success of that organization. Every organization has structures, and I've been dwelling on organizations. However, aside working for organizations, do you have skills? Some of us are professionals. These are knowledge and structures we can begin to apply on our businesses and our operations to ensure that we begin to grow at an alarming rate, and each unit of our organizations begin to function on their own. One of the successful companies in Africa is MTN. And I can tell you that the yearly income and revenue of MTN Nigeria is greater than that of its headquarters. Now, MTN Nigeria is already a unit of its own in MTN group of companies and can replicate itself and expand on its own. Though under MTN group of companies, but can develop itself to a point that it can, to an extent, be self-sustaining and begin to grow and bet other organizations. And that is how larger corporations and businesses are formed. So the importance and benefit of project management in any business operation cannot be overemphasized. So project integration manager is the most important areas that should ensure the successful completion of a project, and he handles them. So before we move to the next logical knowledge areas and establish that, I want to receive questions. I want to receive discussions from us. I want us to discuss on project integration management before I proceed.
Yes, I think on my end, my end, I think it was clear that you have given up the role of a project integration manager who coordinates and oversees all projects, but under him, there are a team of experts and units of programs that he runs to achieve his project objective and goals. So I think it was, for me, it was clear. So I don't have questions. Thank you.
All right. Please, do we have comments from anyone as regards project integration management?
Sorry, just for purposes of clarification, do we now assume the project integration manager is second to the chief executive of maybe a company? Because it's like his jobs, his roles are too loaded. Hello, sir, did you get me?
Hello? No, sir, I couldn't hear you, sir.
Okay, what I was trying to
Please, can
say
you
is
take the question again?
Yeah, can you hear me now? Hello? Hello? Hello, are we together?
Yes, yes.
Hello, what's wrong?
Yes, I can hear you, sir.
Okay, I was just looking at the roles, the too much job of the project integration manager. Looking at his job, I now say, do we now assume that he is the second most important person in an organization, maybe second to the chief executive, maybe the managing director or the CEO of a company? We assume that he is the second person in charge.
Your line is breaking. Can you take it once again?
Don't worry. Please go. Please go ahead. Don't worry. Don't worry. It's okay.
Challenge with the network over there is breaking, but
it's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
I think I can reference for you. He just said that from the look of things, project integrated manager seems works loaded. He's saying he's like he's almost second to the CEO. Is it right? That's what he was asking, I guess.
All right, thank you. I understand.
All right.
I understand the question now. Well, the whoever is functioning as a project integration manager in an organization may not be the CEO, may not be second to the CEO. A project manager is an appointment in an organization, so he is not necessarily part of the principal officers or officials in an organization. However, the importance of a project integration manager is so large that doesn't make him or her one of the principal officers in an organization. However, any of the principal officers in an organization or even the CEO may assume the position of the project manager in that organization. So any of the principal officers in an organization, which are the main executives, the head executive of that organization, may assume the position of the project integration manager. However, anyone functioning as a project integration manager does not necessarily confer being part of the principal officers in an organization to them. It's just a position that is appointed or hired. I hope we understand that.
Yes, it's clear. Thank you. Thank you. It's clear.
All right. Thank you, sir. So can I proceed to the next logical process, knowledge area?
Yes, please go ahead.
All right. The next knowledge area is project scope management. Project scope management. This is the second most important knowledge area in project management. So what does scope mean? We've established what scope means before, as when we're talking about the project constraints. So can someone remind us what scope is as regards a project? What does the scope mean?
I think if I can remember well, scope means the boundaries of a project, where project starts and where it ends, so that you don't do or run like headless chicken. You must have where to start and where to stop. That's my understanding of a scope. Project scope.
You said the scope is a feature of a project, the length and breadth of a project, all that is necessary to ensure the successful completion of that project minus what is not necessary. So when we begin talking about scope, we are talking about the major productive process of that project. And so project scope management is the management of all the processes that is needed to ensure the successful completion of that project and its deliverables. It's a process of incorporating all the process that is needed to ensure the successful completion of a project and its deliverables. The features of a project to its deliverables. That is what project scope management is all about. Now, when I was talking about integration management, I made mention of the fact that it is possible that a manager functioning in project integration management may not have first-class knowledge on the basic productive process of that organization. However, there are exemptions. And one of the exemptions in organizations that has to do with finance, especially banks, whoever will be a bank manager is someone that must necessity have first-class knowledge in the basic productive processes of the banking activities. In fact, in many cases, whoever must be a bank manager must have functioned in various departments across the banking processes. That is one of the criteria that is necessary in a CV that will be considered to be a bank for bank management. So there are exemptions to this. I just want to add that to what I said concerning project integration. The scope of a project are all the processes that ensures the inclusion of the features of that process. And there are 6 knowledge areas that I'll be considering as far as project scope management is all about. I also want to mention that anyone functioning as the scope manager of that project, like I said, must have first-class knowledge on the basic productive process of that project. E.g., if I'm dealing with a a project that has to do with civil engineering or construction, for instance, who we assume the position of scope management as far as that project is concerned is a civil engineer or someone that has first-class knowledge in that field. If I'm handling a project that has to do with educational processes, e.g., a university, who will handle the scope of that project is someone that has first-class knowledge in that process. So I'm talking about someone that is in the education field. And so depending on the project you are handling, whoever is handling the scope or the stakeholder that will be handling the scope is someone that has first-class knowledge on the basic productive process of that organization. And if it is a project that you are handling single-handedly as a project manager, of course, it must be a project that you have first-class knowledge on. Else, you must leverage on someone that has that knowledge or partner with an individual or organization that has expertise in that area to help you out in carrying out the project. And so the first logical process under project scope management is plan scope management. Plan scope management. Now, after the project charter has been signed, it is the duty of the manager functioning under scope to begin to plan the scope of the management. He is the one that has the responsibility of developing the scope documents and communicating the scope to the responsibles. And by responsibles, I mean those executing that project. To explain certain things that will be very important to us. Now, every organization, there is what we call responsibility assignment matrix. A responsibility assignment matrix, simply put, is the distribution of hierarchy in an organization, the distribution of positions or assignment as regards certain level of positions in an organization. And the first hierarchy in every organization, this is cut across every type of organization in every sector. The first position or the first hierarchy are the responsibles. The responsibles. Who are the responsibles? The responsible are those that that carry out the basic productive process in that organization. Okay, so let me go back to the example I gave earlier, the Dangote group of companies. Now, let me narrow it down to its sugar processing organization. Now, who are the responsibles? The responsibles are those that work in the factory, mix the chemicals together, carry out the processes that is responsible to produce sugar, the packaging and the distribution. Now, no matter the processes that is employed in that organization, no matter how they have good project managers, no matter how they have good human resource managers, no matter how they have good health and safety officers, no matter how they employ good securities, no matter whatsoever process in that organization, that does not concern you and I as a consumer. What concerns you and I as a consumer is that when we need sugar, we go to the market, we purchase sugar, and that is it. No matter the processes that is put in place in that organization, all of the processes is geared towards one thing: production of sugar, which, as far as that unit is concerned, is their basic productive processes, and that is what keeps them in the market. That is where their profit for sustaining the organization comes from. So anything put in place, any managerial position put in place is to achieve that one thing. And those responsible for achieving that works to achieve the basic productive processes, which is the basic business of that organization, are the responsibles. The second hierarchy are the accountables. Who are the accountables? The accountables are those that the organizations delegate certain assignments or responsibility to them, and they in turn delegate those responsibilities on the responsibles. So under the accountables, we can have the project managers, we can have the human resource managers, we can have team lead or the scope manager. Now, these individuals have certain assignments as regards operation in that organization delegated to them, but they don't handle it themselves. They oversee, monitor, and control those processes. So they in turn transfer that responsibility on the responsibles. Now, these are the two major hierarchy I want to bring out. The fourth are the consulted. I won't talk more on that. And the fifth is the informed. Now, the informed is a group of CEOs or the principal officers in that organization. So, but my main emphasis are the responsibles and the accountables. So I'm saying that it is the duty of the project scope manager to relate the scope of that project to the responsibles. He must ensure that the scope assigned and established by the sponsor of that project is related to the responsibles, those that will work in executing that project. Because you cannot penalize them for what you've not explicitly related to them. So they must be aware intimately on the scope and the requirement of that project. It is only them that you can have certain expectation as meeting the scope from the responsibles. The second logical process or the second requirement under project scope management is collecting requirements. Collecting requirements. Now, requirements can be documents, requirements can be resources in terms of finance, requirements can be workforce. All that is necessary to achieve the scope of that project are the requirements that the scope manager must ensure that they are available. So when it comes to resources in terms of possibly raw materials that is needed, of course, he may not be the one to go out to procure those materials, but we have certain managers that or knowledge area we still speak about called project resource manager. We have project procurement manager. So what the project scope manager is expected to do is to ensure to relate the requirements or the raw materials or the resources that he will need to the resource manager, and the resource manager will now authorize the procurement officer to get those materials. However, the finance that will be necessary to carry out that procurement must have been released from the cost manager. So we need to successfully take this knowledge area before we begin to see certain pictures begin to take place on how organizations and projects are being managed to ensure the success of operations. And so collect requirements is the duty of the project scope manager. Requirements as regards the scope of that project. The third logical process is define scope. Define scope. Now, it is the duty of the scope manager, having planned the scope and collected the requirements, to define the scope to the responsibles in that project. I've spoken about that earlier. And the fourth is create WBS. What WBS means is work breakdown structure. Let me explain that. So when you have large projects, it is important to break those projects into phases. So For a specific project, you can have phase A, phase B, phase C of that project. Going back to the example I gave last week on the Kenyan government working towards boosting Kenya's international transportation. Now that project is so large that it needs to be broken down into phase. So we can assume that phase A of that project will be collecting the requirements of that project, having certain meetings to establish the geological position or the geographical position of these structures that will help to achieve this strategic objective. Phase B of that project might be working on the structures. Possibly you are looking towards erecting, building a seaport, building an airport, can be erecting or working on the structures. Having established the structures, phase C can be tagged to be collecting the gadget machineries or the capacities that will enable those structures to function. So we're talking about procuring the crafts that will be used, procuring certain materials that will be incorporated into those organizations or structures to ensure that they begin to work properly. Another phase that can be tagged might be recruitment. Recruitment of the personnel, the workforce, the people that will begin to function in that organization to ensure that the processes are achieved. So there are different breakdown structures that can come into play. So ability to break down a project into phases, attach a leader to each phase, attach schedules or timeline to each phase is called work breakdown structure. And it is the duty of anyone functioning under the scope of a project to ensure he breaks down the project into understandable parts, especially for large projects, so that each individual or stakeholders knows when to come in, knows the time to come in, so it is easily understood and managed this way. The fifth logical process is validate scope. Validate scope. Yes, the project scope manager must ensure that whatsoever he's noticing as regards the execution of that project is in line with the scope of that project. So he must be the one to validate the scope. He must be the one to give a go ahead. So during the monitoring phase of the project, he must monitor to ensure that the scope of the project is carried, the scope of the project is established. So he must validate the scope. Controlling the scope is if there is need for scope to change. If there is need for scope to change at any given time, it is the duty of the project manager functioning under scope to ensure effective communication that project is changed. So controlling scope is also the duty of the project scope manager. So before I proceed, any questions before I proceed? Are there any questions? If there are no questions, kindly tell me to go ahead.
Please proceed.
Hello, can we hear me? I can't hear feedback from anyone.
I say, please proceed. Please go ahead.
All right, thank you very much, sir. So we've established two knowledge areas, project integration management and project scope management. And I think our time is far spent. we still have 8 knowledge areas to go. So we'll be stopping here today. So generally now, the floor is open for anyone that has comments, for anyone that has questions or certain things you want to speak about. Since we have about 9 minutes left. So I think on this note, we'll be rounding up for today's class. Over to you, sir, Dr. Alonge.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, our instructor, Manager Boluwatife, Joshua. I want to believe that we all enjoy this class. And we can see we have people of much experience there from different backgrounds. So this is a kind of value to this lecture. Giving examples, adding to the points, you will be speaking from your background. So we want more interactive class. So please, I know it's done already. So let's give examples. Let's ask questions, and give comments. Yeah. So, and also the class is still opened. If you have any friend, any colleague that are interested in joining us, please invite them to join us. This lecture is recorded, it's recorded on YouTube. So at the end of the lecture, also I will make the YouTube available for us to listen to. So anybody joining us can still join us because we have recorded the class. You can listen later. That is one. And again, please, you can be making your payment gradually. Some people paid everything at once. Some paid a part of the fee. So we encourage you little by little. Please make your payments so that it will not be much on you at the end of the lecture. So I requested that you send me your postal address so I can post the notes to you. We have e-copy. We also have printed copy like a textbook. So please drop your address on the WhatsApp group. So we can send a post to you wherever you are within Nigeria. And for our participants from Kenya, I'm working on the arrangement so that I can also have a printed copy apart from the e-copy. So is there any question, any observation before we close the class? The floor is open.
Sorry, I may need to ask. For some of us who might not be having box address, but we have home addresses, is it going to be possible? Is it possible for you to deliver? Or do you have contact addresses we could pick them up from either Lagos or Abuja?
Okay, where's your base?
Abuja.
Abuja, okay. I know Mr. Adekunle also is based in Abuja. Mr. Adekunle, do you have a postal address? Because we are using snail post. We can't use DHL. So, okay. Mr. Adekunle, do you have a post?
Address?
Come again, sir?
You mean postal or courier?
We can't do courier except you want to pay for courier. Manager Bolu, how do you want to send how do we send it? Do you need postal address or home address?
Okay, I think what will be done is let's after the meeting both of us will discuss on that, and then whatever.
Okay. So we discuss on that after the meeting, then we'll let you know how to send it.
Conclusion will come to be communicated on the platform certificate. Material.
Okay. Please, I also encourage us to invite our friends, our colleagues to join us. We need, actually the number is very small, but we just need to go ahead. The more the number, the better for us, in organizing this. But because we have given our word, we need to go ahead. So please, anybody, they can still join us. Even if they have just a little amount of money for commitment, they can join us, they can listen and watch the video so that they will not miss anything. So thank you very much once again. I want to wish you a lovely weekend. Do have a lovely night. Bye for now. If there's no comments.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Doctor. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye,
Bye.
Mr. Ismail, Mr. Adekunle, Ado, my friend from Nairobi, Mr. Ade